Hello, wonderful people of the internet. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Time of Contempt by Andrzej Sapkowski, so without any further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so, if you couldn't tell, this isn't my usual background. That's because I am on holiday and I've done the best with what I have here to make a nice looking setup, so excuse it not being the bookshelves that it is usually, but yeah, I think this looks quite nice. I don't know what it is, but it looks pretty neat, so that's good. You're balanced on a table on a stool against a Bluetooth speaker, which isn't actually any more elaborate with what I usually put my phone on to film, but yeah, you don't need to know that, but that's where we are. So, we're reviewing The Time of Contempt, which is the second book in the novel part of the Witcher saga. The Witcher books have got a lot of different ways you could say what number they are chronologically. That's how I'm going to say it. That's a whole other can of worms that I don't want to open. So, before I get into the review, full spoilers for the book and probably the show as well, although let's be honest, the show's not going to follow the books at this point. It's not really, loosely maybe, my hopes aren't high. But if you want to read the books and watching the show, are reading the books, click off now, so not spoiled, and I will see you once you've read it if you want to come back. Okay, so The Time of Contempt follows on from The Blood of Elves, which I reviewed about 2 months ago, roughly, and it follows directly on from the events of that book, which kind of left, trying to remember, because I can't remember what was in this book and what was in the last one. It leaves Geralt having tried to hunt down Rience, who is looking for his surrogate daughter Ciri, and Ciri travelling across the continent with Geralt's kind of girlfriend at this point, Yennefer, and that's where we are. So if you have watched my previous reviews, you'll know that my feelings towards The Witcher were mixed. On one hand, I liked it and I wanted to like it because I liked the show, a lot less now granted, but I liked the show and I really liked the game, so I want to like the books as well because the world and the characters that this story is about are important to me, and so I wanted to like it, but I was struggling because I found that the way Sapkowski writes was kind of grinding with me. He definitely doesn't spoon feed you at all. He just lets you figure things out. It's like there's no maps, there's no appendix where you can refer to who's the ruler of what country or anything like that. And he does like to do a lot of exposition and things like that, which is something that I haven't encountered before because adult fantasy books, and I assume that happens quite a lot in adult fantasy books, at least with the whole ruler, map, exposition thing, I am not really familiar with, so I kind of threw myself in the deep end and was struggling. But now I've read The Time of Contempt, I can happily say that most of my issues in that department are completely gone, which is really nice. So I'll start talking about that first and how this book improved on kind of the mixed feelings I had towards The Blood of Elves. So in The Blood of Elves there were a lot of moments where it was either people discussing their ideologies or kings or rulers of countries discussing what their plans are, and it kind of felt directionless or irrelevant to the plot at most times. And in this book we got to see that pay off, which is really good. One of the things that really paid off was the whole King's Conference thing, because all the things they were talking about happen in The Time of Contempt. But also, I appreciate all the ideology things because then you really know where the characters stand, and so it's interesting to see how their experiences change their ideologies in this book, because all the characters have a bit of a bad time in this book, and I don't think it's going to get any better for them, which hurts me because I was kind of happy with where all these characters were, and then it all just went poorly. So, but yeah, that's how it improved on the previous few books. There was a lot of stuff going on, and let's get into that because I'll ramble too much because I haven't got notes, because I haven't got a pad to write them on, so I'm just trying to say all of this without any clear references to the points I'm trying to make. So in this book there were quite a few events that stood out to me, but the one that stood out the most was the coup on the Isle of Thanet, if that's how you pronounce it, which is the chapter of Sorcerers big conference where they're going to discuss what they're going to do, basically, where they stand in the politics of the world, which are pretty messy at this point because there's a lot of stuff going on. And basically what happens here is two factions of the mages start scrapping, and it's Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer and Dandelion stuck in the middle trying to figure out what's going on. And this was maybe 50, 100 pages. There was the build-up, seeing all the tensions there, where Geralt and Yennefer enjoying the banquet that occurs before the meeting, and you get to meet some characters and get to know them better, like Philippa Earhart and Dijkstra. And I love Dijkstra from the games because he was funny, and he's just as good in the books, so that was all fun. And then everyone goes to their chambers, goes to bed, they sleep, and then they wake up and all hell's broken loose. So I was just losing my mind because I didn't know what was going on, and I was excited to see how this was all playing out. So that was brilliant. And having all this build up with the exposition with the sorcerers in the Blood of Elves, and on the other level of, because the sorcerers kind of interwoven with the rulers' politics at this point quite a lot, so then seeing how what the rulers were planning affects how the sorcerers are now behaving, all of it was just chef's kiss, and it made me like the Blood of Elves more, which is good, because I wanted to like that book and wasn't really feeling it, but now I'm just like, well, I respect what it was doing, and it paid off wonderfully. So the kill on the Isle of Fened was a real highlight of the book for me. But there are a whole load of other things that I really enjoyed, namely this scene where Geralt is healing in Brokilon Forest because he was completely decimated by a sorcerer called Vilgefortz, who I love to hate. Vilgefortz is a great character because he's such an arse and a horrible person, and it's like he's very charismatic and very subtle in his manipulation and things like that. So he's just so awful because he's never directly horrible to people. I mean, he is to Geralt because he beats his ass, but there was this whole conversation they have before this confrontation where Vilgefortz is basically subtly threatening Geralt and trying to persuade him to join him, even though Geralt doesn't know what Vilgefortz is trying to convince him to join. And it was just all amazing, and I love Vilgefortz's character, and I'm excited to see him be a villain later on, although where he is and whether he's alive is kind of hazy at the moment. But he was so awful, and it was great. But what I was trying to say is the scene that I really liked is Dandelion and Geralt in Brokilon Forest, where Geralt has gone to heal, and Dandelion rides to Brokilon, which is where the Dryads live. He's nearly killed, but he's let through, and he discusses the politics of the world currently with Geralt. And this is the sort of thing that in the Blood of Elves would have kind of bothered me because it's exposition-y, but because this is not set up but actual stuff that is going to affect the plot later on, it was brilliant, if that makes sense. So my problem with the King's Conference is it didn't feel like it was going anywhere. It was setting up stuff, and so it was kind of heavy going, but the exposition here with Dandelion discussing what's going on, it's all moving forward and being affected by things you've read even, and will affect what you're going to read in the future. So it was just really interesting, and I love Dandelion. Dandelion's one of my favourite characters, especially in the show. I really like how Joey Batey plays him. That's a whole other thing, because I just love Joey Batey in general. But that was a great section, and maybe that was helped by the fact that my brother in the other room, for the one I was reading, was watching like a nature documentary, and so there was this really serene music playing, and so when Dandelion rides into Brokilon and starts singing for the Dryads, and I had this wonderful music in the background, I was just like, this is a moment, this is nice. But that's the most nitty-gritty I'll get, at least in the positives about things I liked. In a larger sense, I really enjoyed the characters in this book. They were expanded upon. Like, Yennefer in the books has been really mysterious, and there was a whole section at the start of this book following Yennefer and Ciri as they go to Gorsvelen, which is where Arethusa is, which is the sorceress's school. And you get to see Ciri and Yennefer's relationship, which I really like, which really annoys me because the show cocked it up massively. But that's another thing I'll talk about later. But just things like that with the characters. There was also with Dandelion and his moments with Geralt, and also with Ciri, where when Geralt and Yennefer reunite at a point in this book, Ciri is asking Dandelion what they're saying to each other, and Dandelion kind of tells her, based on his knowledge of like romance, because he's a poet and he's all-knowing, of course. So, and it's just like a sweet moment, and it's so good. I just love all the characters in this book, and the politics were really good and enjoyable because I was like, oh, that's bad, that's not good. And there were moments where I was really angry at these fictional rulers, more so than I've ever been at my own politics and my own country, and there's a lot of stuff going on in Britain, so the fact that I was more angry at people in a fictional book says quite a lot, but it was just all really well executed, and perhaps at times the book got a bit slow and hard to read, but I don't feel like Sapkowski was failing at what he was trying to do, because that's his style and that's the way he writes, and he does it perfectly, and so I've got to respect that. It's just such a good book and such a good addition to the book so far. Now, I will touch on some of the things I didn't like, because there's only one thing that I really want to say I didn't enjoy. I'm not saying that it's a bad thing about the book, but it's something I want to touch on because it made me uncomfy. The thing I didn't like about this book was the ending, and it's not that it was bad, it was that it was quite upsetting for me. So, Ciri, during the kill on Fained, ran into a portal where has been teleported into a desert in the middle of nowhere, and she spends days and days on the suffering and starving and dehydrating, and it's horrible, and I felt bad for her. And then a unicorn comes along and it's all cute, and then she gets taken away by trappers, and so it's horrible again. And then she meets some nasty law enforcement dudes, so it's nasty again. And then she's taken away by this group of adolescents called the Rats, who are the children of Time of Contempt. I think that's what Sapkowski described them as. And I thought they were a cool idea, and I'm excited to see what they do played upon in future books. But there were things that happened with the Rats that upset me. So basically, Ciri, during their flight from this village, this is her with the Rats, killed someone, and so she's already traumatised by that because she's not killed someone before. And they're ridden away, and Ciri's exhausted physically and emotionally. She's trying to go to sleep, and then one of the Rats, trigger warning, I'll put one at the start of the video, but one of the Rats tries to rape her, basically, and that was horrible because Ciri's only a child. Really, she's 13, 14, and she's been through so much already that it was just horrible to think that now she was going to have to deal with that. And then one of the Rats basically came up and went, "Oi, what are you doing?" and make the guy go away before anything happens. So that was like, "Oh, it's okay." And then they raped her? I mean, I'm not sure, because it's not explicitly said, but from the way I read it, it was very much not consensual because she was too tired to do anything and too confused about what was going on. And that hurt me because that's really awful to read about this character that I care about. It's like, I don't really like Ciri, but on a level of just sympathy and empathy, that was awful to imagine her going through, and it's actually really upset me, and that's obviously the intention of the scene, so it's not a criticism of the book because Sapkowski did what he was trying to do with it, but it did make me sad, and it's made me kind of worried for the future of the series because she's still with the Rats, so there's plenty of more time for trauma to happen to her and for her to have to process it, and I'm not looking forward to reading that because, as I said, Ciri's a child and she thinks that she's lost everyone, and that's really sad to think that all these horrible things might happen to her. But I've not read adult fantasy before, and this stuff hasn't happened in any of the books that I've read before, so it's really like, oh my god, this is terrible. I mean, it is terrible, but it's even more shocking to me because I've not been exposed to it before. So that's how I felt about that sequence. So even though I'm worried for the future of the books and the next book, I am excited because apparently the next book, The Baptism of Fire, is just Geralt and Dandelion riding through the war-torn continent together. And that's brilliant because I love Geralt and I love Dandelion and they're the best, so that's going to be really nice to read. And I'm really cautiously optimistic for the show because I don't think Henry Cavill is going to be around for the adaptation of season 3. Actually, I think Baptism of Fire will be filmed post Cavill and it'll be Liam Hemsworth. Although I don't want to get into that because I don't want to write him off before I've seen what he's doing. But the point is that Henry Cavill and Joey Beatty as Geralt and Dandelion or Jaskier in the show have such a great chemistry, and so I'm excited. I hope that they get a bit of the riding across the countryside deal in there, because I'll love watching it. Liam Hemsworth might have the same chemistry, in which case I'm a happy guy, but you know, that's another thing. I don't want to get into it, but before I go, I do want to touch on the show, because this was one of my main grievances that was caused by the book, but not about the book. So, as I said last time in my Blood of Elves review, the show did not follow the book at all, and changed some massive things about the focuses of the plot, the bloody monoliths that I have shouted about in public before, which was a bit embarrassing, but I have, and the way they totally messed up the dynamic between Geralt, Yennefer and Ciri by having Yennefer try and kill Ciri. Just upsets me, because I'm worried about how they're going to put off what happened in this book, and I think they're just not going to. At least, like the Faned coup will have to happen, Geralt getting whooped by Vilgefortz has to happen, but the dynamics of the characters won't be the same, and that worries me. I just feel like I'm like the whole fan base were like sitting in a boat that's headed towards a waterfall, and maybe the boat will grow wings and it'll be fine, but really, probably won't be. But that's a side rant, because I had to get that out of my system. And Blood Origins, what the hell? I won't talk about it, but the Netflix Witcher situation isn't looking good. I could do a video about that if you want me to, because I've got a lot to say, and it won't be coherent, but it will be entertaining to watch, because I'll be losing my mind. But we'll leave it there. What do I rate the Time of Contempt out of 5? 4.5. I say I'll give it a 4.5 because Sapkowski's writing is still kind of grated at times, and obviously the final sequence made me uncomfy, but I don't think that's detracting from the score, because that was yet again meant to be the case. But yeah, I don't want to peak too early, because I know that the Baptism of Fire and Tower of Swallows are meant to be bloody good books, so I'm going to save the 5-star ratings for them. But in the novel series, this was better than the Blood of Elves and elevated the Blood of Elves for me. As for the short story collections and the series as a whole, Last Wish is still my favourite, but I am very ready for Baptism of Fire to take my top spot. So I will start reading Mort after this, because that's what I said I'd do. After Mort, I'll probably read The Doll's House and the Sandman series, although I did get from the airport when I was coming here Batman Year 1, and that's pretty exciting for me, because I've not read a superhero comic before, so I want to get into that as well. But I will definitely read more now, because I need something to cheer me up, really, because this was depressing. This was very depressing on the level of trauma that's happening, not just to Ciri, but everyone. Like, Geralt's broken, Yennefer's don't know where she is, it's just, it's all a mess. But so I'll read more to feel a bit happier about life in general. But you have that to look forward to in the future. I will be reading on the plane home, so I should get the review out relatively soon, but I don't want to make promises, because this happens all the time and I haven't finished the book. But we'll leave it there. So I will see you then, and I hope you all have a good one. Bye!